back, guys, to episode 9. So we see the crowd is screaming for one of them to die as Daryl and Merle about to fight to the death. Andrea ends up finally seeing how the governor's running us, but as soon as they think everything's going well, smoke grenades end up going off and Rick and the others end up coming for Daryl. And it seems like the governor just doesn't care. They end up making it out, but they can't make it out without taking Merle with them, so they end up taking him too. But of course, when we get into the forest, when we see Glenn, we see that this isn't going to go too well. But Rick tells him for the time being, he's going to be with them. We see that Herschel's actually tending and talking to the new group, saying that Rick will probably actually want them to be an addition to the group. But Glenn, Maggie, and half the group aren't having it with Merle being there. But Daryl said he'd found his brother once and he's not leaving this time, so he says he's leaving. So Merle and Daryl go their own way. We see that this man is trying to take over the prison, but Sasha and her brother aren't having it. We see that Glenn is not doing too well either, taking out all his anger on a walker. Glenn tries to start screaming at Rick, so Rick starts shutting that down real quick. We see that ever since the second time the team came back, all the people want to leave Woodbury now. And at this point, the guards don't care about shooting people. There ends up being walkers breach the door and one person's about to die, as the governor just comes out, shoots him, and runs away. As soon as Rick and the others get back, he explains that Daryl went with his brother and he ain't coming back. And I just want to point out this random part was put in the thing. Well, why she kiss him? Did Herschel not see that? Anyways, Herschel's finally telling Glenn how he really feels about him, that he needs to chill out, because as he's going on this rampage, it ain't helping Maggie at all. But now that Herschel's finally got Rick's attention, he finally gets to meet the new team. Sasha's brother ends up telling him that they'll be good assets, and if they ever have to fight another team, that they'll be willing to do so. And Rick's about to say yes, but he ends up seeing Lori. And I think he was answering to Lori, but he says no and starts screaming for them to leave. We see that Rick ended up making a dumb decision, but he also sees that he can't stop seeing Lori. And we're back with episode 10. We see as Rick's putting up some barricades for the walls, he ends up seeing Lori in a dress, probably the prom night or a wedding. Rick drops all his stuff and runs out to try to find her, and as soon as he does, he ends up thinking he really sees her. But of course, in reality, he's not seeing her. But to Michonne, it probably doesn't look like that. Andrea says she doesn't want to end up fighting her old friends, and where the governor says that he's not going to fight. As Daryl and Merle are having random conversations, Daryl talks about how nice it is back at the prison, even though Merle can't go there. Herschel says if Glenn keeps going down this warpath, that he's going to get himself killed. And Andrea ends up asking Milton if she'll go with them to the prison, but Milton rats her out really quick, but the governor wants her to go to him. And we see as Glenn disrespected Herschel, Maggie's not impressed at all. And the other prisoner end up putting up all the other barricades, as Daryl and Merle go and save some people on a bridge. At first, I actually thought it was the cars from the Morales family, but it ends up being a random family, which Merle literally tries to rob. But Daryl stops that really quick and lets him drive off. And this is where we figure out if Merle would have came back with Rick that day, that Daryl and Merle were about to rob that team blind and leave. Which is crazy. Like, imagine if they would have robbed Shane and all of them and left. Anyways, Glenn's warpath finally settling down, while this baby is going through it all. Come on, Juice. Anyways, Herschel ends up seeing Rick looking out for Lori, and Herschel ends up asking when Rick will be back, and Rick says he'll be back soon. But out of nowhere, the prisoner ends up getting shot beside a Carol, and we see what sadistic man shot him. The man starts coming out of the bushes as he's trying to shoot at Rick. Everyone's trying to move around as Carol has to sit behind the body, and the governor ends up sending in a thing of walkers and a person. Rick about almost dies, but ends up getting saved at the last second by Daryl and Merle. And it looks like Rick doesn't like when his house is getting played with, and it looks like we're going to war. And we're back with episode 11. We see that everyone's talking out their plans as Glenn still doesn't feel safe with Merle being there, but Daryl doesn't care. It's gonna happen anyways. Rick looks around and makes sure there ain't no more snipers waiting for them, as Carl has a strong talk with Rick and tells him that he doesn't need to be the leader anymore. Andrea ends up saying, "What the heck? Why'd you go up there and try to shoot at them?" And the governor ends up saying that they went up there to talk, but Rick and them started shooting first, and Andrea believes it. We see that everyone around's getting ready for war, as Merle and Herschel talk a little bit about how crazy the governor is. So Andrea finally asks Milton if they're actually going to go or not, and Milton says yeah. And we get to see how damaged the governor's eyes. So Andrea does a little Michonne technique and breaks out the walker's teeth, and they end up putting it on the stick, but they end up running into the same team Rick was with. So Milton ends up taking them back, and Andrea ends up going to the prison alone. She ends up making it, which makes me so happy because I can't wait for the team to see her. But we end up seeing that the team really isn't happy to see her, as Rick pats her down aggressively and asks her if she got anybody else with her. She ends up getting acquainted with everybody that died and says that she came up here because she just wants to stop this war and she doesn't want them fighting. Andrea and Michonne get into another fight, but Michonne's honestly right at this point. So Andrea and Carol have a good talk, while Carol says if she doesn't really love him, that she needs to just kill him at night. Rick gives her a car and a gun to leave with, and they tell her to get home as she leaves and gets back to Woodbury. We see as Carl's looking out at night to make sure there ain't no snipers, that Andrea was about to kill the governor at night, but ends up stopping herself, and I'm gonna tell you right now, she's gonna wish she didn't. And we're back with episode 12. We see that this is a Carl, Michonne, and Rick run, but as they're going down the street, they end up getting stuck. So as soon as they fix the car, they end up running in because the dudes start screaming for their help. They end up getting into a booby-trapped area and find out real quick that it's not abandoned. Michonne says she can slip to the roof if they hold on, but she actually gets up there and he ends up being gone, coming out the door, almost shooting Rick. Carl ends up shooting him. Real quick that he has bulletproof armor on. And Michonne says, why would it even matter? And Rick figures out it definitely matters. It's Morgan. Apparently Morgan has his whole entire place booby-trapped, but they all end up getting into Morgan's place, seeing that he has a crap ton of guns and a map of the whole entire city. Which, don't forget, Morgan's Rick's neighbors, so they definitely lived close. Carl ends up wanting to get a surprise for Rick, but Michonne says she'll go with him. So Michonne and Carl end up going, as Rick waits for Morgan to wake up, and it looks like he's already up. Morgan tries to kill Rick, but stops him and explains that he's the person that he talked on the walkie-talkie every day with. And that's where we figure out that Morgan never heard him call him on the walkie, and also that Morgan's son, Dwayne, died. Morgan said that Rick would have called him every day, but Rick didn't call him every day, and explains to him that a lot of stuff was happening with the group. Rick asks Morgan if he'll help him with the war, and Morgan doesn't want to get into a war. And then Michonne and Carl end up getting in a fight because Carl wants to act big. Michonne shuts it down quick. Michonne and Carl end up finally getting the picture that he wanted, as Morgan actually stays. They get in the car and make their way home, as they see that that man that was screaming for him definitely didn't make it. And just at this point, being on the road, you can't make it by yourself. And we're back with episode 13. We see as Rick, Daryl, and Herschel end up pulling up to some place. We end up figuring out that it's actually a meeting, and it's for Rick, and it's for the governor. They end up talking, but of course Rick doesn't want to talk because the governor ended up killing a couple people, and the governor says he doesn't really care and he's not here for that. Daryl and Herschel end up keeping an eye out for anyone, in which we see that Andrea ends up bringing the governor's two right-hand men. Daryl and the governor's man end up trying to have a who's bigger fight, while Myrtle's trying to go fight the governor while they're vulnerable, but Glenn says they shouldn't. Andrea ends up trying to butt in, but obviously her and Rick and the governor aren't all butting heads, so they tell her to leave. The governor tries to make a deal about land, and Rick says no because they'd be losing more than 3/4 of the land that they own. So Rick asks what else would he have in mind. The governor says what he really wants and that he'd leave everyone alone for is Michonne. Then we end up going back to Daryl and the dude trying to show off. But of course you already know that Daryl's winning that competition. Herschel and Milton end up talking about how Herschel lost his leg and how Rick took it to make sure he survived. And we see at the house that Glenn's still making sure that no one's coming. Andrea ends up breaking down to Herschel saying that they don't want them to fight, but Herschel says there's going to be a fight, she just doesn't pick a side. The governor ends up showing why he wants Michonne because he ended up losing his eye, and she also killed his zombie child, which he just acts like it's his child. Anyways, Glenn and Maggie finally get to live a moment of luxury as they're not arguing and finally happy together. And I mean real happy. The governor sees that Rick's not gonna go his way, so we already know what's about to happen. Everyone silently gets back into their cars and drive both of their ways back home. As soon as Rick gets back, he tells everyone that he needs to have a meeting, as the governor says that he needs to get everybody ready to know how to use a gun. Rick ends up saying that these people don't care about them, they just want them out of the prison. But Rick says that they're not going to let that happen because this is their new home. So Rick says that they're about to go to war. He sits at the gate at the last spot him and Lori shared a good happy moment. Rick asks Herschel if he would give up Michonne if it was his choice, and he says no, that we need everyone. He says that Rick made a good choice, and now let's see where it takes him. And we're back with episode 14. We see that this is the past time as Michonne's walkers are still alive. In this moment was probably closer to when Michonne and Andrea first met because Andrea's not really sick. Andrea explains that those walkers are there for a reason, as we see the old chains cut to the governor's chains. I guess he thinks that Rick's gonna give away Michonne and he's ready for it. Even though Andrea's pretty late and they're about to go to war, Andrea finally wants to go back to Rick and the others. Milton says the governor's going so crazy that he'd probably kill her, but she says she's gonna sneak out somehow. The governor ends up telling her about how he's glad she's a reliable source, and she just agrees with him. She ends up telling the new people that she's leaving and going to the prison and not to tell anyone. But of course, all the governor has to do is do a little bit of scooping, and ends up figuring out that Milton actually knows where Andrea went, so Milton ends up telling him. Andrea ends up running as she hears a truck coming up. As soon as she goes to hide, she was right. It's actually the governor looking for her. That is crazy. We see that the group that left Rick's prison aren't too fun with all these walkers, but they don't care because they'll do whatever's needed. Andrea tries to hide in the grass, but the truck ends up seeing her as she runs and finds an abandoned building to hide in, until it becomes a game of hide and seek. He shatters glass and yells trying to find Andrea, which is kind of stupid. You probably hear her better. But as soon as he gets close to Andrea, he ends up hearing another sound and walks the other way. He finally ends up getting her caught at a door, but little does he know that the door that she was hiding behind had a whole bunch of walkers as the governor has to fight. And while all this is going on, some random hidden person is burning all of these walkers. So someone doesn't like how the governor's running the place. Andrea's literally 5 steps away from getting to the prison, and ends up getting grabbed as Rick almost sees her. But sadly all he sees is a bunch of walkers walking around. The other two end up ratting out that someone burnt all of the walkers, but it seems like the governor has a really good idea of who he thinks it is. And little does everyone know, far deep locked up in one of the rooms, he caught Andrea, and little do we know what's gonna happen to her. And we're back with episode 15. We see that Rick's actually making the decision to take Michonne to the governor so they don't have to worry about anything. Literally, Herschel doesn't want that to happen, and you can already tell that Daryl goes by what Rick says, but doesn't want it to happen either. Rick ends up getting Merle involved, and that's when you know he's gonna do it. And you already know that Merle's in. So Rick and Daryl already know what they're doing to keep Michonne occupied, as they're acting like they're going out for a run with Glenn. But in reality, they're gonna give her to the governor. Daryl tries to help Glenn and talk to him about Merle, but he says that he'll never forgive Merle for what he did, at least to Maggie. Daryl finds Merle looking around for some crack, but we can definitely tell that Merle has to be up to something else. And of course, we knew it. Merle acts like he's gonna help Michonne take out some walkers and knocks her out. He takes her blade and ties her up as he takes her to the governor. But some good things happen this episode. Glenn actually asks Herschel if he can marry Maggie soon, and Herschel says yes. It's a good sit-down talk, which I really enjoy. Merle ends up trying to fix the car as the alarm goes off as he tied Michonne up to a pole beside the car. She still ends up taking out the walkers, as Merle finally gets the car alarm off, and they drive their way on, as Michonne says that Rick never wanted this to happen, but Merle said he did, but just wouldn't go through with it. But out of pure conscience, Merle ends up letting go Michonne and tells her to run, and tells her specifically to tell Daryl not to come his way. And we see finally that Merle actually turns to a good guy. Way later on, Daryl ends up meeting up with Michonne and figures out that he has to look for Merle. Merle tells the governor to meet him at this exact spot, which he brings in some walkers in the car, and he goes into hiding mode as everybody pulls up. He ends up successfully taking out some of the guards, but they find him as soon as he starts shooting. The governor ends up coming in and biting off Merle's fingers, as he then beats the crap out of him, and Merle says he won't plead for mercy, so the governor makes sure he doesn't beg. We see as all the groups together, Rick ends up telling everybody that they could have gave Michonne away, but they chose not to at the last second, but Merle did it anyways. But Rick tells everyone from now on they're not going to be scared and they're going to get through this together. Because Rick's not going to be the leader anymore, everyone's going to vote together. And sadly, at the end of the episode, Daryl has to meet his brother and kill him as a walker. And we see that Daryl breaks down for the first time ever. And we're finally on the finale of Season 3. We've seen how it started on a walker's eye the first episode, it ends on the governor's eye. We see he's beating up whoever started that fire of those walkers and ain't gonna let them go. And if you had your subtitles on, you actually figure out that's Milton beforehand, but there you go. The governor gives him one more chance. He says if he can kill Andrea, that he'll let him go, but he tries to kill the governor, and the governor stabs him and leaves him there with Andrea. He says since he couldn't kill him alive, he's gonna kill her when he's dead. Rick says sorry to Michonne because, he's kind of gonna give her away to a crazy man. But she's fine because she knows he did it for the whole group. The governor gets everyone ready as they're about to storm to the prison. But when they get there and start shooting everything up, no one comes outside. So they for sure think that they're hiding inside, so they break the door down. They walk in and find absolutely nothing there, which I'm confused about. While little did the governor know that Milton actually dropped some scissors and stuff on the floor right under Andrea. She just has to be able to get it. And as they keep looking through the prison, they keep killing walkers, not finding anyone. Until as soon as they come back, they actually get ambushed. And this kid ends up running away from the war straight into Carl, which he tries to give his gun back to Carl, but Carl just shoots him anyways. Like, what? Did that just happen? Anyways, the group are finally happy, but they know that they gotta finish him off, so they go looking for him. All of the governor's people end up trying to run away because they don't do the fighting thing, and that's where the governor stops in front of them
and kills all of his people but one that hides under a corpse. While Andrea's trying her fastest to get out of these before Milton turns. Rick ends up saying, "Let's go now so we can figure it out." So they leave looking for where the governor went. They end up finding the woman that survived, and she tells them how Governor killed every one of the others. Andrea only has to get one more handout. As she does, Milton's already seconds away from her. So we'll figure out if she survived in just a second. They almost end up going into a shootout as the woman gets up and tells everyone that the governor killed everyone. Rick ends up thinking that's absolutely crazy, but he asks where do they think Andrea could be. And they find the room that Andrea was in, and she actually did kill Milton, but sad enough to say, she wasn't fast enough to not get bit by him. So she asks Rick one more time for his gun and says this time that she knows that the safety's not on. So he gives her the gun as Michonne sits there with her, and we end up hearing one bullet go off and one of her favorite characters is dead. Rick ends up bringing all of the people from Woodbury back home and tells them this is their home now and to enjoy it because this is how their life's gonna be from now on. We see Rick's definitely doing something right because now he doesn't see Lori anymore. While we see the walkers in the field and Andrea's cross for the last time, that's how we end the saddest season of them all. I'll see y'all next time.